Today, I'm going to be sharing with you all of my favorite builds in Albion Online over the years, builds that I use every day, every week, builds that I seldom use, builds that I used as a new player, builds that I use when I do full loot content. Let's just jump into it. First up is the Great Axe. Now, the Great Axe was the first main weapon that I used when I first started playing because everyone told me it was the fastest dungeon clearing weapon. That's not the case, but it was the first weapon that I used once Roast Pork came out to solo group dungeons because I had nothing else. So this does work, and I use a Scholar Cowl with Hellion Jacket, Guardian Boots, and of course the this is mainly what I would use to solo group dungeons, but I would use these skills, especially the defensive passive there, Thetford Cape, and the Roast Pork. This lets me solo group dungeons. It's not the fastest, it's not the most efficient, but it was all I had back in the day, so it's what I used. For Bear Paws, this is my favorite weapon in the whole game. This is my entire favorite build. Probably my favorite build out of everything in this entire video. This is what I mainly play these days. And the reason why is this build lets me jump players and defeat them amazingly quickly. It's good mobility. It's good, just bruising ability, as in I could fight 1v1 with other enemies pretty decently. Not the best, but the most important thing is this is the best way to dismount players off their mount, meaning if they're doing faction transports or if they're just mounted trying to run away from me in a yellow zone or even in the mists, I can dismount them incredibly quickly with this. And even though they can run away because I don't have a purge on my helmet, because I killed their mount, they will be wounded from the bleeds that I put onto them, and then I will be able to mount up and then dismount long before they get their mount back, meaning it's basically a free win. So this is what I use. I use the Cowl of Purity, the Stalker Jacket. Both of these have been nerfed, by the way. That's how strong they were. I use the Royal Sandals because out of all the boots, this gives you a damage bonus and it gives you incredibly good move speed. For skills, this is what I use on the Bear Paws. Definitely want to use Adrenaline Boost. The Q3 allows me to hit mobs while I use my W2 to catch up to enemies. Thetford Cape, I just find it's super good in brawling because of the 15-second cooldown. For the Mace build that I use, it's very basic and very simple. I have a Fort Sterling Cape, and what this does is it just cleanses me if I get crowd controlled. I have a Grizzly Bear mount. I pretty much only use this for transporting. I don't really use this in full loot zones. I don't use this for pretty much anything else. I just have Guardian Helmet, Guardian Armor, and Guardian Boots. Here's the Mace. Here's the spells I use, the passives, and of course Beef Sandwich for that 15.5% max health boost. And it's super tanky. I just use a basic shield. I don't use anything special. Again, I almost never use this weapon for anything other than transporting, and I don't really transport much anymore, if ever. The Spiked Gauntlets I only use to clear yellow zone open world mobs. This is its only real purpose, just because it's huge and bursty. I just use cloth everything. I don't even really use the abilities on this. I just have it because it's the highest, additional damage that I can get by increasing. Cloth items increase your damage the most in this game, Face Skill Robe being one of the higher ones. Thetford Cape, Beef Stew, and Poison Potion, Satchel of Insight. I use a Black Panther so I can dash around in the open world and pull mobs and get to mob camps quicker than other people. Not on a Panther, so that's why I use it. This is a faction bombing weapon. I use the Longbow. This is the spells that I use. I use Q1 because it hits more targets and it deals a slightly bit more damage. I don't really need the armor shred from Q2. Assassin Jacket and Vispot lets me go up to mob camps. I mean, not mob camps, but faction outposts and basically get 10 stacks on ambush so that I can, hit them really, really hard with the rain of arrows. If I'm feeling extra spicy, I'll switch to explosive arrows. And I use the Face Scale Hat so that I can cast my E without any interruptions. The Carolino Cape lets me cast twice. The Beef Stew just simply increases damage. This is one of my more favored faction bombing weapons. It was nerfed slightly due to less people right now playing the game, so there's not as many people blobbing up, but at the same time, AoE escalation was also nerfed, so it's not as strong anymore, but it's still really, really fun. So, Whispering Bow is the highest damage, longest ranged, just sustained DPS weapon in the whole game. This is the build that I use. A lot of it involves running away. This Undead Cape helps me run away. These Demon Boots, when low on HP, helps me run away. The Hunter Jacket combined with the Whispering Bow deals tons of damage. If I'm feeling spicy, again, I switch to explosive arrows, but not usually. The Assassin Hood lets me get the Hunter Jacket and the E-Spell back. Otherwise, I could use a Spectre Hood, but it's not as efficient as the Assassin Hood. So the Crossbow is a sniper weapon, and here's what I use with it. Essentially, I normally use Sundershot. I don't use the Silence all that much, but the Silence is really nice to fire into crowds, so it's pretty decent. But essentially, what I do is I use the Scholar Robe here to buff our cast timer so we can snipe extra fast, and I use a Call of Purity for that extra damage, which is basically going to hit most targets. I also use the Q1 for even more damage. Now, other than that, for escaping, I have the Brazilian Cape combined with Minor Work Boots. And the reason why is the Brazilian Cape gives you a shield, but it also makes you immune to purges while the shield is active. And it's a pretty strong shield just for flat 5. It's pretty good. So essentially, I snipe like another cloth user. What I do is I sit on my mount and I just look for a cloth user nearby. I target them. I get within range, pop my armor, pop, my crossbow, and then, hit them with the snipe, hit them with the Avalonian beam. I try to hit them with the Sundershot first. That increases the damage massively, massively, massively. If they're still not dead, I hit Q, and then I just run out of there. And if they're still close, I can throw a poison potion at them if I want, but I generally don't. But just in case, I do have one on hand. So Energy Shaper is an insanely fun weapon, especially if you juice it up. I do have 2 variants that I use on this build. One is for fighting in choke points, which I'm going to show you right now. For fighting in choke points, I use the Energy Shaper with these skills, and I use the Royal Hood to pump up the damage. I use the Druid Robe to pump up the damage. I use Minor Work Boots to get away, and because I'm always going to be out of sight of Purge range, I use a Heretic Cape to throw down some traps, and the only bad thing about this is that if I throw them down and I'm like running super far away and I decide to mount up, if someone steps on these kind of late, then it resets my mount cooldown and then I'm screwed. So I'm kind of iffy about this, but I still really enjoy it. Now, the other one that I use is for contesting open world chests or attacking outposts, and I simply just swap to Assassin Jacket, let this stack to 10 for massive damage, and I bring along Invis Potions so I can get closer to the outpost without being attacked. Now, this thing doesn't really kill that many people in outposts. It's more fun for open world chests than anything else. Bolt Casters is one of my older builds that I use, and this is generally what I use if I solo clear dungeons, not group dungeons, just regular old dungeons. I use the Thetford Cape, I use a Stalker Hood, I use Druid Robe, I use Hellion Shoes with a Refreshing Sprint, I use Cooldown Reduction Food, and these are the skills that I use. I don't use Caltrops, believe it or not. I keep it on Sundershot. That way I can Sunder the boss and then cast Death Ward Climax, and they usually die pretty quick. For the Light Crossbow, I actually have 2 builds. I'll show you both of them. So this is the PvE version of Light Crossbow right here. I just use, Q2, W3, passive 2, and with a Crypt Candle, I use the Spectre Jacket. The reason I use Spectre Jacket is this is for clearing solo dungeons, and the Spectre Jacket is the best at that, especially at lower tiers. I have the Royal Sandals. The Royal Sandals and Crypt Candle really pump up the Spectre Jacket's damage. The the Spectre Hood lets me reset my armor cooldown so I can get double dose of the Spectre Jacket. So whenever the Spectre Jacket runs, out of juice, I can just, pop it back on, and it's ready to go again, and it helps me clear dungeons insanely fast. I have to use a Cabbage Soup combined with Spectre Jacket, otherwise my health will drain way too fast. So for the PvP version, it's a little bit different. Here's the swaps that I generally use for PvP. And yeah, it's mostly the same. Sometimes I do opt for leather boots with the Refreshing Sprint, but most of the time I just go Royal Sandals because it's faster and it can't be purged. I also go Cooldown Reduction Food here. Though with the recent changes, I might switch this to Beef Stew, and of course Poison Potion instead. But essentially, my build, this stays the exact same. I always use this. This is what I use for Cleric Robe. This is for sniping people running at them or away from them. Cooldown reduction, super good to have. It's pretty basic. So the Cursed Staff, this is what I use here. These are the abilities that I generally use. Sometimes I use Laser depending on if I think I can catch my opponent if they run away or not. I use the 4th passive for move speed. I have Cleric Robe, Purity, Hellion Shoes with Refreshing Sprint. I have Cooldown Reduction Food and Mist Collar and Thetford Cape and Poison Potions, very important for that. For PvE, I generally use something similar to my other PvE builds, which looks something kind of like this. Pretty standard stuff. And swap the boots for the... hold on. Well, it really depends. This is for, like, group stuff. Though I have... where are my boots at? I have cultist sandals somewhere. There they are. So I'll use this if I'm doing groups, and then if I'm soloing, like a hard boss, I will use this, and this essentially stays, it becomes this for PvE, essentially, and then swap it there for that. So that's the only real difference. Oh, wait, we also have Crypt Candle instead, and Beef Stew. But yeah, that's generally what it looks like. Shadow Collar is basically the same thing, the same exact build. This is for soloing group dungeons, this is for soloing statics. It's just faster and more efficient because it has a heal, whereas Curse Staff has a high damage E spell. But Shadow Collar generally even better for bossing because I never lose the stacks. Roast Pork, very important. Druidic Staff is what I use to solo certain bosses in group dungeons. It's also really good for PvP, but not chasing people, only if they can't run away. I use the Scholar Cowl and the Guardian Boots as defenses. I use the Druidic Staff. Now, sometimes I use Revitalize, but most of the time I use Protection of Nature because it boosts my E-spell. It depends on the boss fight. If the boss fight has a really long charge-up ability, then I go Revitalize. If it does not, then I go Nature or Protection of Nature. The Mercenary Jacket is super good, especially combined with Torch. That's how I get the maximum healing, and of course, Roast Pork. So for Battle Axe, this is generally what I use, and funny thing, I got this 8-4 and I've never ever used it. I have no skills selected. But generally, I would use these skills, just like that. Sometimes I might use Lifesteal instead, but generally not. Hellion Jacket, I can swap this out for Spectre Jacket or Mercenary Jacket. Basically, the jacket doesn't matter too much. But Hellion Jacket can come clutch in mists, even though it's nerfed. I use Sandals of Purity with the Energetic Sprint. For the mana, because this is very mana intensive when you use Moizak, because it does cost more mana to use all your skills. Now, I don't use this food. I do not use Roast Pork in this build. I use Pure Mist Snapper, but I don't have any on hand at the moment because I haven't renewed Premium on my chef. I also use Hunter Hood for the Reflect. Very, very powerful stuff, and Thetford Cape. For Dagger Pair, this is purely for Invis ganking. I go off-screen, start the Q3. I also use W1, just all this here. Once my Invis potion gets low, I go Assassin Jacket, stack it to 10, make sure that I use Rotten Ground on the target, then I cast E on them, then W, auto-attack them, and then finish them with an Avalonian Beam Laser. I can improve this build slightly, well, not entirely, with a Brazilian Cape, or an Avalonian Cape, but I think Thetford goes out faster, and I'm all about speed. Also, Beef Stew for more damage. This one-shot, I made an entire video of how to one-shot basically almost every target in the game, depending on your specialization, so I don't even need 8.4, but I do happen to have a pair. And I've only ever used this once against Chosen One. You can check my Twitter for the clip, it's hilarious, he gets real salty about it. Here's the build that I use for Deathgivers. This is mostly in mists. I have the Cowl of Purity, Thetford Cape. Mercenary Jacket is amazingly good for sustain because these things hit fast. So this is like a super huge full heal. Deathgivers, I use Q2, I use Shadow Edge to catch targets. And for Soldier Boots, I actually use Rejuvenating Sprint here. And I do not use a Roast Pork. I use a Pure Mist Snapper, but I don't have any on hand at the moment. And a Poison Potion. So for One-Handed Dagger, this is the build I use. Morgana Cape, super important. Hunter Jacket, these are the spells that I use. I use the Royal Helmet to stun. I use the Royal Sandals to chase. Moizak for the auto-attack damage, Beef Stew. And some people are going to be like, Torch is better, Torch is better. No, it's not. It is not better when combined with Morgana Cape and Hunter Jacket. And Minor Poison Potion. This is my 1v1 set. This is my, if I want to fight a guy on a faction outpost set, I can just nuke his HP with this. This is easily countered by Hunter Hood, but there's not much I can do about that other than run Mage Armor. Now, the Bloodletter build is a very fun one here. So essentially, I go for maximum possible mobility, and I do that with the Mist Collar and the Pork Omelet for cooldown reduction, Royal Sandals for chase, Stalker Jacket for damage, Cowl of Purity for damage, Thetford Cape for damage, Poison Potion for damage. And essentially, as soon as they get below 40% HP, you execute them. Your armor, your helmet, Poison Potion, the weapon itself can absolutely destroy everyone, and no one can escape this, not even double-bladed staffs. This is a double-bladed staff slayer. Oh boy, the Wailing Bow. This is my most useless weapon in my entire catalog. I don't even have a build for it, because no matter what build I try, no matter what build I use, I have never ever even gotten close to killing anyone in Yellow Zone faction warfare with this thing. I have shot this into massive choke points, crowds, blobs with, as much damage stacking as possible, and not even chunk people for half. This thing is completely and utterly useless to own. I don't have a build for it. The Arcane Staff is a really dirty bruiser weapon that I tend to use sometimes. I use it with Call of Purity for damage, Mercenary Jacket for sustain, Thetford Cape. I use Soldier Boots with Wanderlust for chase. And the Arcane Staff, it has a silence, it has a purge, if I can land it. I'm not that good with it yet, but it's pretty damn brutal, and I run it with a beef stew and poison potions. The Witchwork Staff is by far my favorite all-time faction bombing weapon. It's not the strongest, but it's the most fun, because you group a ton of people up into a tiny little area, and you're going to get a lot more kills with this than the Longbow. The Longbow is more dangerous. So here's how it works. We have the Witchwork Staff with these abilities. We have the Black Hole, which sucks everyone in. We have the Royal Helmet, which drops a stun barrel on top of everyone, dealing good damage as well. We then have the Witchwork Staff Q ability, which silences, and it does tons of damage. We have the W ability, which does tons of damage, and it gives you a teleport. But we can cast the Q spell twice with Caerleon Cape. We get away with Minor Work Boots. We use Assassin Jacket and Invisibility Potion to approach an outpost blob. It's just the most fun weapon. It's the most fun weapon. The Life Curse Staff, I used to use this thing for skinning. This is back whenever Shadowcaller did not work with your skinning garb, because it did not count the skinning garb as cloth or leather. I don't know what it counts it as now. I still don't technically use it for skinning, but I have no build for the Life Curse Staff. I'm sorry. I still have one on hand, though. This thing's worth, what, 4 mil? I just hold on to it for nostalgia's sake. The Fire Staff, I only use this thing for skinning, so I have the Skinner's Cap, I've got the Skinner's Garb with the Crypt Candle, Skinner's Work Boots, and the Fire Staff. And the reason why I use Fire Staff is if I need to blow up a 0.3 enchanted animal, Pyroblast is really quick on the draw, so I just mash EI, I don't even let it charge up. This is just a free 1,000 immediate damage to the target, which lets me claim it as mine. It's the highest damage ability that goes out the fastest than anything else as soon as an animal spawns. Like, I'm sitting there mashing my E button, and as soon as that deer spawns, I'm just blowing it to pieces. So this is how I steal kills. That's the only reason I'm using the Fire Staff. Also, the auto attack damage, it has this little fireball thing, and that makes it really nice for one-shotting animals when you combine it with your hide animal poison, which, even with 8.4, I can't one-shot tier 5 monsters, because the only real way to one-shot tier 5 monsters is to level up the tier 8 Elder Animal Skinning, which will improve your hide animal skinning's spell. The other only way to get it to one-shot tier 5 is to awaken your Fire Staff and give it ability damage, but that costs too much and that's way too risky, so I'm not ever going to do that. Not ever. For the Permafrost Prism, this used to be my dismounting weapon before 8.4s came out, before I discovered Bear Paws. And back then, Bear Paws, they had a longer range, but they didn't hit nearly as hard as Permafrost does. But when 8.4s came out, Bear Paws pulled ahead and I'm able to dismount tier 8 Oxes in Yellow Zone with it. So, but Permafrost was never really able to do that in one go. But here's the build I would use. Basically, I'm using Scholar Robe and Morgana Cape to speed cast Ice Shard along with the passive here. And Royal Sandals is for chase. Call of Purity is to hit the target and slow it down. Poison Potion and Beef Stew for more damage. That's essentially it. It's just a dismounting weapon set. Wildfire Staff is another fun weapon. I would prefer to use a tier 5 one so I have all the abilities, but this one was gifted to me on live stream actually. And essentially, I'll use Firebolt or the third Q if I have tier 5. It really depends situational if I use Flame Blast or Wall of Flames. If I'm fighting melee, I use Wall of Flames. If I'm fighting anything else, I use Flame Blast. If I'm fighting under-geared opponents, I'll use Flame Blast. And generally, I use the third passive here. Now, as for equipment, I use a Book of Spells in my offhand slot. I don't use a cape, and I use Wanderlust to chase. I use Cleric Robe to survive, and Hunter Hood to potentially deal more damage to someone that goes all in on me for wearing cloth. So essentially, if I pop Hunter Hood into Cleric Robe, I take no damage. They take a ton of damage if they're slamming into me. And this weapon it's brutal because it deals percent max health as true damage, which is really nice against a lot of targets. The Blight Staff is something I would use in Bandit event just to tag as many people as possible. And this is generally what I use. I just use a Blight Staff. I'll probably most likely use the last W spell, not so much this one. But this just lets me spread the Q stacks onto as many people as possible. I use a Guardian Armor so I can unstealth people that are trying to faction bomb the posts, but also to protect myself and reduce damage taken. It also slows enemies, so if I'm going to die, I hold people back a bit. Combined with the slow of the Druid Sandals, it's really nice. This is also a way to tag lots of people. This was actually buffed recently. Now, I use Judicator Helmet to also tag a lot of people. It stuns them, and the way it works is I run away while casting this. The enemies get stunned, and I'm long gone with a nice frozen trail, that they have to waddle through to get to me. And so I always end up getting away. I also use Pork Omelet. But this is just how I tag a lot of people. Now, sometimes I will not use this helmet depending on the prices on the market. I will use a Cleric Cowl so that I can be immune to being bombed. That's the only reason, and it pisses off all the pre-made faction torps and discords. That's the only reason I use it, is to make people mad. Double-bladed is a really hard weapon for people to get away with, or get away from, and that's why I love it. So I use the Cowl of Purity so I can snipe targets to keep them from healing. It's a good interrupt as well. I use Stalker Jacket purely for damage because I'm sticking to targets. Royal Sandals helps me chase and run away. It can't be purged because it's technically channeled. And yeah, there you go. And this is head for K for damage. I have Pork Omelet because cooldown reduction is king for mobility builds. Now, I'm a little different than other double-bladeds. I do not use Whirling Strikes. I use Concussive Combo. I mash my spacebar for auto attacks, and I mash my Q button for damage. This thing does plenty of damage to farm mobs with. It hits players really hard. It stuns them. It's super annoying to deal with. It's a little less damage than Whirling Strikes, but it's way more sticky potential, and it's easier to play. Whereas if you're doing Whirling Strikes, it turns off your auto attack, and if you auto attack during Whirling Strikes, you don't get the full damage from it. So I just like to mash buttons like a low IQ, brain dead player, and so I use Concussive Combo. Of course, I use Stun Run for chase and for the stun, and I just use the first one because I want to stun the target enemy just randomly. Super annoying to deal with, super annoying to be part of. I don't use Lifesteal or anything because, again, I play yellow zones. I'm not really trading with other 8-4s. Now, this build, I did try to fight an 8-4 Deathgivers player, and he kicked my butt, but he did not kill me. I was able to escape with this exact build. So I know I can't beat him, but I know he can't beat me either, and that's what makes this build absolutely beautiful. Now, the Spirit Hunter, this is a wacky build that no one's ever done, and I do not actually fight other players with this build. This is my I'm in the back lines and I want to hurt people build, okay? So the way it works is I use the inner focus to increase my damage and move speed, and then I combine it with the face scale robe and the boots, and the Cowl of Purity, which is now being buffed by the Spear's W spell, massively, by the way. I chuck my spear, and then I beam my laser, and then I run the heck away, all the way to the back of the back lines, where I won't ever be bombed or attacked or ganked or killed in a faction v faction clash. It is a coward's build, and I don't care, because this thing melts people. This thing lets me snipe people in a big... It's the highest damage line attack in the entire game. And it's just so damn fun, and it essentially looks something like this. It's like, we want to get the third one there, and then we run up, and then we chuck spear, and then we laser beam, and then we run away. And we're so fast, and like, we will kill like 10 people doing that. It's so funny. The spear is a tricky one, and I'm going to try to do my best to explain it, because it's really silly. I actually don't have the items right now, because it's something I normally just bring to the bandit event. But essentially, we have the Skinner cap, with the bear trap. We have the heretic cape with the devious trap. For boots, I'm gonna have to show you on the Destiny board. I'm sorry, guys, but we're going to be using the where is it at? The hunter shoes for the increased crowd control duration. For the offhand, where's my offhands? I use the leering cane, which gives me increased crowd control duration. For the armor, which I do not have leveled up, I really need to get it leveled up, but I don't hardly ever use this build. I use the Graveguard armor, and the reason I use the Graveguard armor is because it has this spell, the Soul Chain, which, the way I do my build is I harpoon someone, and then I run back, like, well, I guess the bunny died, but I harpoon it, and then I drop the trap, I use the trap for my boots, and then I hook the player so I can drag them even further while dashing away, and I yoink them into the middle of my Bridge Watch blob, and it usually gets a player killed because they're too slow to run away. My carving sword build is pretty dang weird, and I'm going to explain it the best I can, but essentially, this build lets me always win trades against other melees except Battle Axe, and unfortunately, it does not let me chase double bladeds. It doesn't let me chase what is it? It doesn't let me chase other carving swords or just other sword users in general, but this will always beat all other melees to the point where they're forced to run away and leave me alone. And I count that as a victory. So here's how it works. The Shoes of Tenacity, 12-second cooldown, lets me constantly go invisible to deal bonus magic damage. That adds up very quickly in a fight, but most importantly, the Carving Sword shreds armor with its E spell, meaning I increase the damage of the boot. I increase the damage of the Stalker Jacket. I increase the damage of the Cowl of Purity. I increase the damage of the Thetford Cape. I used to increase the damage of the Poison Potion, but not anymore. They fixed that. Everything that I do gets a damage increase. And yes, if I'm fighting another Carving Sword, they get a damage increase too. However, when it comes down to it, I'm hitting them for hundreds more damage every 12 seconds, and it's even less time than that when I eat the pork omelet. And boy, oh boy, it's just too dangerous. It's like, I go invis, they don't know that I'm charging them. I go invis, they don't know I'm rooting them. I go invis, they don't know that I'm, lasering them. And yes, the boot procs off of any and all abilities that one time. So if they're super far away, and I use my boot, I can use my laser to trigger the boot damage to snipe. So I can actually keep my distance if I want, and then hit them with like a root or something, which it's bugged. The target dummies are kind of bugged when you use these boots, by the way. But against players, it works wonders. Also, I am always constantly fighting. This is a build I only use in the mists, and because I am constantly fighting in the mist camps, there are mobs everywhere. And guess what these boots also allow me to do? These boots basically turn the mobs onto my team. They make them on my side. And technically they don't, but the way it works, let's say I run into a pack of mobs, pretend these target dummies are a pack of mobs, and I'm charging up my sword charges. The enemy sees me getting beat up by mobs, so he runs in to fight. I go invis, the mobs now turn to him to fight him, and the mobs have aggro on my enemy and not me, as long as I don't hit them with an AoE attack. And so now it's me and 2 to 3 mobs against the enemy, and it's ridiculous how awesome these boots truly are. Like I said, the only downside is that I can't chase anybody. They can run away if they have Wanderlust, if they have any kind of mobility, but it succeeds at bowling them out of the mist camp. And because I play in yellow zones, the only threat I have is other 8.4 players. If I approach a camp with this set on, no one can touch me. No build can touch me unless they are also in 8-3 or 8-4. And that's a fact. And again, all the melees have to run. If it's like an 8-3 Curse Staff, I'm in trouble, of course. But I could probably kill... Like, Curse Staff has no mobility anyway, so unless they have boots and they can, kite me around, that's the only way. But I'm a sword user. I hit mobs, I go fast, I can move fast, I can root, I can... snipe them with laser. There's so many things I can do. I have so many answers with this build. It's a ton of fun. You got to try it out. Oh, and in the case of ratting, which rats do exist in Yellow Zone Mist, I have the Royal Sandals on backup. So when I scout the area and I see rats, I just swap boots, and then I chase down the rats and kill them. That's all you got to do. Essentially, I'm only wearing these boots if there's other 8-3s or 8-4 melees in the area. The Enigmatic staff, I've had mild success with preventing bombings, but it's not my favorite weapon, but I'll show you it anyway. Essentially, I play full support with a shield on Q, the cleansing move buff on W, so that lets everyone move faster that's in that circle for a little bit, and I play this as full support mode. And the way that works is if people need mana, mostly myself, Circle of Inspiration will do that. It puts the mana puddle on the ground, the little blue circle here, which is hard to see in houses for some reason, but easier to see out in the field. Then I have Royal Jacket. This is for cooldown reduction for everyone. It increases their attack speed. This also reduces my cooldowns, which is really nice because I always want to have my E available when shit hits the fan. Also, Boots, I just have Refreshing Sprint, so I can get cooldowns faster. Cooldown Food, Pork Omelet. I have the Carleon Cape so that I can double shield. So I cast a shield, I get the cooldown back, I can shield someone else. Or I can, just keep a shield on for twice as long while that goes off cooldown. But essentially, if I'm using Boots and my Q, it's... it didn't work that time, that's weird. But normally it gets the cooldown really quick on Q, but it didn't work that time. Maybe it's because the armor bugged it out. But yeah, this is just a full support. I can't cast my E on myself, unfortunately, but, cast armor, cast shield, and things just work. It's really nice for keeping people alive. I forgot to mention the Curse Staff Rat mode. I know I covered Curse Staff earlier in the video. This is Rat mode. I use just flat 4 everything here, and I know I don't use the Terror Bird. I use a Mule, but I use the Curse Staff. Usually I use Q1, W2. Sometimes I use W1. Just flat 4 Cleric Robe, flat 4 Soldier Boots with Wanderlust, flat 4 Hunter Hood. I do not use an offhand at all. Not one bit. I don't use food and I don't use potions, though I probably should. But I don't need to. I wait until someone's at like 20% life. That means they have 1 bar of health left. I dismount off the screen. I Wanderlust directly at them. I curse them up and they're dead. And then I collect their loot. It's an easy free mill, consistent 1 mill. This is my rat build. So for Glacial, I have 2 builds. So the first one, this is more like a Zerg versus Zerg kind of build, where I just want to dump on the enemy as much as possible. And this is a little cooldown reduction spammy build. And the way it works is pretty simple. I cast Ice Storm towards the Zerg, the enemy Zerg. I drop my W, I push R, my Boots, and then my D. And then I just wait a bit, and check this out. So I've got 2 seconds until I can cast another Glacial, which is super annoying for the enemy team to deal with. And now we have 2 Glacials on the floor. And that is just dirty as heck. It is insanely dirty. It kills so many people. It's so fun too, but it is very mana intensive. So I did forget to mention I do run Limhurst Cape for the mana, because this drains mana like a beast. The second one is for faction bombing, but it's more like a faction bomb and run kind of thing. So pretend the outpost is like this cage, I guess. And the way it generally works is I'll cast a Glacial, I'll run away with Minor Boots, and unfortunately, when I'm hitting enemies, because that thing lasts like 15 seconds on the ground, right? So when I'm hitting enemies, it will put my mount on a 10-second cooldown every single time it hits somebody. So as long as no one chases me on their mount and follows me, I'm safe. But in the case that I do successfully bomb it, I mount up, I run away, I'm left with a very long cooldown on my boots again. So what I do is I swapped to leather here, usually with cooldown, and then I just use this assassin hood here combined with the spell Glacial Obelisk to reduce my cooldown. So I have 67 seconds on my boots before I can bomb again. So I cast the obelisk, and then I use the helmets, and that reduces the cooldown a bunch. But see, we knocked it from 60 seconds to like 47 seconds, right? It's not a lot, but it will add up over time. So I'm just chilling outside of the, the faction outpost, waiting for my turn to be able to run in once again, put more of these obelisks out, because the obelisk does reduce my cooldowns. And, use my helmet a second time, and try to get my boots back as soon as possible. We got 14 seconds left on boots. By then, I just, swap back to minor work boots, mount up, run back towards the outpost. I go invisible, by the way. I fully charge Assassin Jacket so that I get that huge damage boost on my E-cast. So you saw the previous build did 206 damage to the bunny rabbit per tick, and I could have 2 of them down, whereas an Assassin Jacket charged up does 272. So it's not as strong, but it's more reliable because I can stealth up to the enemy outpost. I generally do not use invis pots. I I just walk up as soon as I see nameplates. I go in Viz, I let it charge up, and then I run up because I want them to run at me so they run through the Glacial Ice Storm and hurt themselves. That's why I use myself as bait. Life Touch Staff is when I want to be a healer. I tend to go AoE burst heals because I feel like that's just the best. I usually use a Holy Orb as kind of a shotgun effect after like a big outpost fight. I generally don't use these other spells. Holy Beam's really nice if you have like a friend you're healing, but I just feel like Holy Orb gives me the most the most AoE healing, right? And as far as Holy Flash goes, I mean, it's a big circle on the ground, which I just think is super nice. You can't see it in the house, but you can see that it's a pretty big circle. I also go cooldown reduction with the food, with the Mist Collar, and the energy potions, which I also use boots here for energetic sprint. This is how I get mana, and I think that like I don't have mana problems. I really don't. I can sit there and heal basically a faction fight the whole time. If I get low on mana, I chug a tier 2 potion. Oh boy. Or I just use boots. It's fine. Now, this is also part offensive, right? Because I'm not using smite. I'm not hurting enemies, but I can hurt them with the Face Scale Robe, the Thetford Cape. Auto attacks deal a pretty good chunk as well. Caliber Purity. These are all things that I use. Now, I think that Face Scale is better than the, what is it, Robe of Purity, because look, Robe of Purity, it knocks players back, it does a bit of damage. 30-second cooldown, that's fine, whatever, who cares? Whereas, you know, this is 22-second cooldown with all my cooldown stuff, but also it does more damage, and it also knocks the target back in its own way. So instead of having to run towards the enemy and boop them away like a silly dude, I can be running away, drop a firewall, and they cannot bypass that wall. I'm already long gone. They're not purging me. They're not doing anything. I can also snipe with laser beyond my firewall, dealing tons of damage, and fully heal up by the time they get back to me. By the time they close the distance with their boot spell, or, you know, their leap abilities or mobile abilities, hey, I've got like 5 seconds left on my my armor again, so I'm sitting there healing myself, I'm taking their hits, and then here comes another firewall, oops, and now I'm running away again, and when they start closing the distance, they get lasered again, they get Thetford Caped from auto attacks. It's a pain in the butt to kill me, even though I'm in cloth. It's not fun for them, and when people see a healer in trouble, they come and save your ass. So people dismount, and they will help fight with me, because I can heal them, right? They obviously want to fight. So there you have it. That's all the weapons that I currently use in 2023 on Albion Online. I don't really use any other weapons, and yes, I have tons of specializations and stuff. You can see that, you know, Curse Stab's completely maxed out. I've got Perma 100, Glacial 100, all the Arcane Stabs maxed out. Life Touch 100. I've got Wildfire 108, Fire Staff 100. Boy, oh boy. Let's see here. We got Druidic 100. I don't have Blight 100. I could. I have the points for it, but I'm waiting. All right. I don't like the Prowling Staff. It's only level 73 because I wanted to get the Mastery to 100. We got Double Bladed at 100. We got Spirit Hunter at 100. All the daggers are at 100. I need claws. I've been trying to get an 8-4 claws, but no one's putting one on the market. So if you want to gift me an 8.4 claw, I would love to use it. I would use it with a Face Scale Robe and a Avalonian helmet, so I can just murder people. All bows 100, 107, 108 for Longbow, 107 Whispering, 102 for Wailing. Wailing sucks. I regret leveling that one. Man, oh man. And all crossbows 100, by the way. I really don't like Siege Bow. I think the damage is too weak, even in ZVZ, and Weeping Repeater just is terrible. Heavy crossbow needs a rework. It sucks. There's no reason to use that. Spike Gauntlets 100. Working on Ursine Maulers manually. It's taking ages. I'm not doing it through group dungeons or statics. I'm doing it in Black Zone. 62 on Great Hammer. We got 44 on Mace. I don't use maces ever, you can tell. 61 Realm Breaker, 114 Bear Paw, 61, 61, 86, 100, and 100. And then for swords, 100 in carving. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my combat specs. And as far as armors go, I got to work on these new potions, getting them up to 100. All the other potions are at 100. Not quite a chef character on this one. 100 Burdock Comfrey. And yeah, Not much crafting or refining, really. Not really a crafter. As you can see, all this stuff is just empty. Completely empty. We got level 1 in Trinity Spirit. There was a little market opportunity there, okay? And, yeah, we got 83 on Warbow, 53 on regular bow. Oh, man. What it was like to be a newbie. Those were the days. But yeah, that's my Destiny board, bros. Anyway, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, be a bro, stay swole. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite weapons are, and builds, of course, and why you would use them, and where you use them. And finally, make sure that you click the video on the right side of the screen. If you don't, you're going to wake up with like a cramp in your shoulder or your arm, and it's going to last like 3 days, and you're not going to have fun. So make sure you click the video.